Hey, what's up? It's me, JDS 4696 or J Bat. Today I'm giving a review for the second volume of Batman, The Greatest Stories Ever Told. And this is volume 2, as you can see. It has like Batman on the cover. Now, just like I never really did like a review for like the greatest stories ever told. I just broke them down into each single story, that they were taken from. Because what these do, they collect like the actual like issues that the stories occurred in, like the actual comic book issues. Say like Batman #1, it probably like included that particular issue, what I'm saying, and whichever volume it was. So like it was the greatest stories ever told, volume 1. Well, this is like volume 2 that I have. So I was actually planning on going back and actually reviewing like the actual whole greatest stories ever told. The first volume, I'm actually still thinking about doing that just to do it, but I may not do it. And I was also thinking about doing these like separately too as well, like do just each individual story that occurs in this volume. But I just decided to go ahead and just do like the whole thing as a complete like volume or whatever. And it has like like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's like it's 10 stories. It's actually like 10 like stories that like Batman stories that occurred over the years, and it jumps from like year to year. It's not like on a set path or whatever. Because like the previous like greatest stories ever told, it actually went kind of in order from like the 30s. It actually has stories from like I think 1939. It went all the way up until like the 80s. Whereas this one, it starts with a story from 1986. Then it jumps back to 1940 or whatever. Then it kind of jumps around or whatever. But I actually thought this was better than the first volume of the greatest stories ever told. I thought this was actually better than the first volume. But what I'm gonna do is touch on each individual story that was in the Batman, the greatest stories ever told, volume 2. Like the first story was called Secret Origins, and this was originally released in 1986. And it kind of gives like a description of like Bruce's like parents being murdered, as usual. But then there's like a love interest that is introduced in this tale, known as Julie Madison. And then you have like Commissioner Gordon as well. Now, I thought like it was basically like kind of like an origin tale to a certain extent. It kind of reveals like like how Bruce Wayne's parents were murdered, and he meets this new love interest while he's like in I think school, and there's like a drama, like his acting program, and he meets Julie Madison, and then you have like Alfred as well and stuff. But there's also like an Uncle Philip that was mentioned too as well, and I wasn't familiar with that character. But I thought that was a good story, and it had like good artwork in it. And then there was like the second story that occurred in the greatest stories ever told, volume 2, is Professor Hugo Strange and the Monsters. Now that was actually in the previous greatest stories ever told, like volume 1. It was actually in that one, but they like repeated it for some reason in this volume. Like a tale about like Professor Hugo Strange. He had created like these huge like monsters. They weren't really monsters. They was basically like giant like men, because they were still like humans, but they were like kind of like just like giant. And then Batman has to like take him out. I know like some of the scenes he had to use like a stick, and he has to like trip him and knock him over. And I always thought that was kind of like cool. That was a good story. But for some reason they have repeated it in this one. Then you have the third story, which is known as The Career of Batman Jones, and this occurred in Batman issue 108, and it was released in June of 1957 originally. Well, it starts with like Batman saving his family, like while they're driving in the car, and they're just coming back from the hospital after having their newborn baby, delivered. What doesn't really touch on their baby being born, but they're driving with their newborn baby, like this couple, and their brakes go out on the car, and then Batman has to put his Batmobile in front of it and stops the car from getting into an accident. Then after that, they decide to name their baby Batman Jones after Batman, because he had rescued him or whatever. So the kid decides to like follow like Batman, like he adapts to everything, dealing with like Batman. And he decides to kind of take on crime to a certain extent with like Batman and Robin. I thought it was like a fun little tale. It was good. I enjoyed that. That was pretty fun tale. Then you have the next one, known as The Prisoners of the World. And that deals with that was kind of complicated, but it had like Batwoman in it, and it had like Batgirl in it too as well, along with Robin too. But it was kind of complicated. The devil like this alien known as Karn, and he has like this machine they can like zap you and teleport you into like another dimension. It was kind of complicated. It was kind of interesting though. I plan on reading that one over again just for myself, just to get like a better understanding of it, you know, because they had some like intriguing things about like as far as like dimensions and like different portals and stuff like that go. That was kind of like interesting to me too, you know. But it did feature like bad woman and a bad girl in there as well. But this bad girl that was in it wasn't the Barbara Gordon one. This one known as Betty Kane. Now there were like about I guess you could say about 6 more stories or 5 more stories, but I'm not gonna like go into description about every one of them. Eventually, I may do like individual ones, you know. I'm not really sure, but there were a couple of other ones that I thought were pretty good, you know, like All My Enemies Are Against Me, Against Me, and this is released in May of 1983, and it occurred in Detective Comics issue 526. It opens with like all the supervillains of Gotham gathering in Crime Alley, like in this local theater. And it turns out that it was actually the Joker that brought them together to help them take out Batman before Killer Croc does. And you know, Killer Croc, he supposes like the major villain of the story, and like that's why the Joker invited all like the supervillains such as like the Penguin, Two-Face, the Riddler, Catwoman, you know, Catwoman, you know, she's kind of like she's not really a villain, but she was also there too as well. Scarecrow, Mr. Freeze, Talia, you know, Black Spider, Mad Hatter, Clayface. He invited all, and other villains too that I'm not really that familiar with, but he invited them all to get together to help them to join together and take Batman out before Killer Croc does. And I thought that was a good story, you know, I thought that was kind of cool. And then there's like other tales too, you know, as well. There was also one that's like, that was pulled from a Batgirl issue, like Batgirl Year 1. But that one was kind of new, because I was like in the year 2003, so that was like in this century, you know. But yeah, as a whole, I thought this was, I'm not going to touch on every single one, but I thought this was actually like better than the first volume though. As you can see, this is the cover of it right here. And far as I know, it was never a volume 3. They stopped at volume 2. And I bet they probably will one day, you know. They're just waiting for more and more stories. And plus, they can go back into the past, you know, and continue to pull out more from the past, which I would kind of prefer, you know. I would kind of like to get to look at more of like the Batman stories, like from like way back in the past. Especially like the ones where it wasn't like any Robin or anything like that. Or even more ones with Robin, you know. I think I would like to get a good look at the 70s more too, and like the 80s too. So if they ever did do like a volume 3, I'm sure they'll do another one, you know. Those the eras or certain, you know, like timelines that I wish they would like touch on, you know, if they did like another volume. But this one, and the reason why I believe I did like it a little more, because it was kind of more modern to me. It's kind of taking place in a time when I was here, like they had like stories from like the 80s and stuff like that, you know. Even like in the 2000s, you know, so and I think that's kind of why, when I was actually reading comic books, so, you know, I think that's kind of why I kind of enjoyed this one a little more, you know. But I read it kind of quick though. It didn't take me that long to go through this. And like I said, the only thing about it, it had one repeat, that the Hugo Strange one. That was actually in the first volume, if I'm not mistaken. They actually repeated it in this volume too, you know. But yeah, I would recommend, especially if you had a Batman, the Greatest Stories Ever Told, volume 1, if you had that one. And plus, if you had the Greatest Joker Stories Ever Told, you know, you might as well get this one too as well, you know. So this is me, JDS4696, or J-Bat, and this is my review for Batman, the Greatest Stories Ever Told, Volume 2. Alright. Okay, so as you can see, this is my Batman, the Greatest Stories Ever Told, Volume 2. As you can see, this version I have, I think they have like different versions of it, you know. It's a thick book, you know, it has like a nice little girth on it. And I really did enjoy this more than the first volume. Because, you know, this of course was the first volume right here that I had. I think I showed this before. Because this is where I pulled like the actual like issues from, was out of this. But I was actually thinking about this, going and just reviewing it as a whole, you know. And I thought this was okay. And this was actually given to me by a relative like a long time ago. I never actually did buy this one. So yeah, these are like the 2 volumes. You have volume 1, then you have volume 2. As you can see, I got both of them. And yeah, I thought 2 was better. And also had the greatest Joker stories ever told too, as well, as you can see the joke on it. This is another one I was thinking about going on and just giving like a full review of it. But I actually did like the issues like singly themselves, you know. So yeah, that was my as you can see right there. So this is the greatest hits, volume 2, and I was just giving like a look of how it looks or whatever, you know. All right, and this is JDS 4696 or J Bad. All right.